Hello, this is Sally Cordova from McKee Consulting, and today we're going to talk about customer relationship management and how to keep your customer for life. Today's lesson is going to be 5 ways to deliver the bad news, meaning that occasionally you have to tell customers things that they really don't want to hear. And what we're going to do today is pick 5 common phrases that we've heard in customer relationship management before and change them into less risky phrases. The reason that we're learning to change the phrasing that you might be using, I should say, is to reduce the risk of upsetting the customer. If you know what to say and how to say it, you can reduce the risk of upsetting the customer any further. Learn words and phrases that work to build customer relationships and replace risky phrases with better phrases. The risky phrases we're going to talk about today are saying, "I don't know," or just a plain "no, we can't do that" to the customer. "That's not our policy," which is a really tough one to say. "I have to try to help you first," meaning they're looking for a manager and you have to try to help them first. Saying something that could upset the customer, a simple word that you didn't mean to hurt their feelings with, but saying to someone "obviously" or "really" could affect the call in a negative way. And if they had a previous bad experience, you might say something like, "You're right, that is bad." And we're going to change all those phrases to something just a little bit better and reduce those risks. The first phrase is "I don't know." Now, all we're going to do is to change that to something a little more simple that says, "I'm not sure, but I'll be happy to find out, Mr. Jones." And it's a great idea to use the customer's name in any of the phrases we're talking about today. And that's the first one. If you have to just plain say no, if they ask you a question and the answer is no, but they're not going to be happy hearing that no, you could say something like, "I understand, Mr. Jones, but what I can do is this," with your emphasis on the word "can," because that's what I can do today. The next phrase is "it's not our policy." Now, something about the word policy just drives people crazy. They don't care if it's not your policy. That's not what's important to them. So instead of saying something like, "That's not our policy," or "That's against our policy," or "Our policy doesn't allow that," what I'd like you to say is something more like, "Mr. Jones, since we have different points of view, let's take a look at the situation and then see if we can come to some kind of an agreement, okay?" Something that agrees that you have the two different sides. Although it's not your policy, stay away from that word. You can still search for a solution. Now, one thing that happens a lot is when people are very upset and they call and they immediately ask for a manager, and you know it's your responsibility to try to handle the call first before you pass it on to a manager. If it really requires a manager, of course you will pass it on, but you have to make the effort first. And so occasionally we'll hear something like, "But I have to try to help you first. Let me try to help you first." And that sometimes upsets the customers. So let's look at a new way to let them know that I have to help you first, but without saying it quite that way. Instead, say something like, "I'd be happy to get you a manager. I may be able to help you depending on your question. When exactly did this happen?" And try to get them a specific piece of information. Instead of asking what happened, say something a little more specific like, "When did this happen?" The next 2 things, we put them together because they're 2 individual words that can really turn a call to the negative. And the 2 words are "obviously" and "really?" So when you say "obviously" to a customer, what it feels like to them is, "That was so obvious, so I don't know why you told me that." So instead, say something, even if it is obvious to you, just say, "You're right. Let me see about that." And it'll make all the difference. And then "really," all that really sounds like when you put a big question mark at the end of that is you're really saying, "Really? Prove it, and tell me again and prove it one more time." So instead, say something a little bit more like, "Oh, I see. I'll find out exactly what happened and do my best to fix it. When did you first notice the problem?" And you can save a lot of trouble by not saying "obviously" or "really" to your customers. And the last tip for today is, if somebody calls up and has had maybe a previously bad experience with your company, and they say something terrible, and you want to kind of agree, so you say, "You're right, that is bad." But we don't want to make our company look bad either. So what you want to do is say something instead like, I understand what you mean. We do try very hard to make sure that this doesn't happen. And then you carry on and you continue to help your customer. All right, so that's your lesson today on customer relationship management and 5 ways to deliver the bad news. Take these ideas and apply them right away, because just changing a few words that you use will reduce the risk of upsetting the customer. The customer will go away happy and your day will go a lot better too.